And you got a notification?
Yeah.
Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of 1+1, your place for inconvenient truth-telling and myth-busting. We are rejoined by my very good friend, Solomon Commissiong. Solomon is a professor. He's an academic. He's an activist. He's the author of several books. He's the editor-in-chief and founder of his own independent journalism outlet called Your World News, where journalism and activism are not mutually exclusive. It's Black History Month, so it's a Black History Month special. We've had Solomon on before. He's a personal friend of mine and a great supporter of 1+1. So let's get right into it because we're pressed for time. So Solomon, thank you for joining me back on 1+1 on Black History Month in North America, right?
That's right. Thank you. It's an honor to be on again. I appreciate it, and continue to do the excellent work you're doing and following the legacy, the long legacy since we're talking about Black History Month, the long legacy of Black media. I mean, you are following in the footsteps of folks like the great Ida B. Wells. I mean, Marcus Garvey's, and did independent journalism, Negro World, and we can go on and on and on. And so,
yeah. Oh wow, that's high praise coming from you, Solomon. Ida B. Wells. I'm gonna remember that. Whenever somebody insults 1+1 and says I'm not doing a good job.
You stand on the shoulders of giants. Yeah.
Oh, and then Solomon, before I get to my first question, I also have to mention that you've had articles published at Black Agenda Reports, but you're also and one of the books that you're an author of, which I think is a criminally underrated book, which I read, which I do have to plug. Unapologetically Outspoken, Hip Hop, Social Justice, and Liberation. And I put that on par with Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, Margaret Kimberly's Prejudicial, and Why I'm No Longer Talking to Black People About Race by Renee. And it's also a fantastic book that people need to get, especially on Black History Month. And alrighty, so let's get to it, Solomon, because you're very busy and we don't have that much time. The last time I talked to you, we were talking about black sitcoms and the problem with Black cinema and Black sitcoms, and why the pair of us actually prefer Black music. However commercialized it may be sometimes, we were both actually praising, Black music more as a much more authentic, coming from, a Black artist, compared to, Hollywood, which completely, dilutes and has its history of making us, jucking and jiving and making a fool out of ourselves. So that being said, I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on the on the Black American filmmakers, on the Black American filmmaker Spike Lee? What are your thoughts on him? Do you give him a plus up, a plus down, or comme ci, comme ça, as the French would say?
I guess, yeah, comme ci, comme ça, or I see, in Spanish, like so. Spike is he's an interesting figure, because, I think that his intention with some of his stuff has been in the right place, but I think that the people that he's pulled in. I mean, because, for instance, he's had some very powerful stuff. I mean, you look at School Days, things like that. School Days was a very powerful film, but like, for instance, when you look at Malcolm X, as important as it was for a lot of folks growing up, I mean, there because of, I guess, the people that were surrounded, that he had surrounded, and I know some people that were advisors on that. I'm not going to mention their names, who were advisors for that film, that the stuff that they put in. So there, and I believe it was Warner Brothers that did the distribution. When you look at the people that that we don't see behind the scenes that are extremely influential in terms of the content. So some of the advisors told him, listen, you got to have this in, you got to have this in, this, this organization was complicit in his assassination. You have to have stuff that points to the NYPD, stuff that points to the points to FBI. And when that stuff wasn't put in there, I mean, they had given, when that stuff was not put in there, that was like the workings of larger entities that were controlling, exactly what content. Like, okay, we're going to greenlight a movie on Malcolm X, but we're only going to go so far. We're only going to go so far. And ultimately, we have to get in a place where the goal is not just to direct and to produce films. The goal is to be able to direct, to produce, distribute the films, to control all means of production of this film. Because when you start to bring in white liberals and and white folks in general, whether it's white conservatives, I don't think too many white conservatives are going to greenlight doing a film on Malcolm, but even like white liberals, as you and I have discussed, there's no love lost for white liberals. They're an extremely dangerous, grouping of political grouping in this country. But as long as they're able to get their tentacles on it in some shape, form, or fashion, things are going to shape shift. I mean, you look at, for instance, the NAACP. It was the fact that white liberals were so involved in the NAACP early on that they were able to throw their weight behind pushing out the likes of a Ida B. Wells, of a W.E.B. Du Bois, because they felt that their politics were a bit too radical. And so you're allowing white folks. I mean, this organization, correct me if I'm wrong, was not created to help white folks or to massage, their fragile egos or sensibilities. This was supposed to be created to help Black people, right? So why do they have any kind of influence over an organization like the NAACP or a film about Malcolm? That's why a lot of us sometimes cringe, not just with Spike Lee, but when there is a film that is coming out about somebody who is a shero or a hero of ours, that because we're like, I hope that this gives some kind of honor to their true legacy and does not do like, the Hollywood thing, try to, have this revisionist history or create some kind of element that they want to interject about their life that didn't exist in the first place. So Spike's an interesting, I think that, and there's other movies on his that you have to kind of create, like the Black Klansman, like what the, it's just, I don't.
Oh, yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. Actually, talk briefly about that.
Yeah.
Talk briefly about that because didn't Boots Riley, who did that brilliant film, Sorry to Bother You, great film, great anti-capitalist film. But he wrote an article for Black Agenda Report, or some Black publication, which Black Agenda Report republished, saying that Spike Lee has just made a guy who infiltrated the Black Panther Party and would COINTEL into a hero.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, to say it even more briefly, because you just kind of mentioned, that's what I was going to say, is that like I don't know because I don't know the dude. I don't know if he's like being intellectually dishonest, if he just doesn't know, and he has I don't know, but that was one of those movies. Nonetheless, whatever the reason, it was one of those cringe things, because yes, this was a man. The Black Klansman was a man. So yes, okay, he was used, to help infiltrate the Klan, but he was also, the backdrop is that all this wasn't mentioned in the movie. So that's why I'm saying I don't know if Spike knows this other side, and if that's the case, shame on him for not doing his due diligence to find out the whole breadth, like what was the breadth of this guy's whole career. Because if he did stumble across that this guy also was used by the FBI to infiltrate revolutionary Black organizations, and he was used in that manner, right then and there, to me, you stop right there. Let's scrap it. Scrap it. Let's find somebody else that we can use, that we can do a film on. Let's stop this. I cannot, because what does that tell young kids? You know, that because there are going to be people, they're going to be students and that whether they're college students or high school students, and they're going to do some more research about this guy, and being impressionable, if they stumble across that this guy was used to infiltrate, revolutionary Black organizations, via COINTELPRO, and was a part of COINTELPRO, an impressionable mind, you come away saying, oh, well, I mean, since there must be something okay with that. There must be something okay with that. There's something okay. No, there's nothing okay with selling out your community in that manner. There's nothing all right with that in any shape, form, or fashion. This is COINTELPRO. This is the, working for the devil incarnate, being J. Edgar Hoover. Yeah, I said it. I mean, an evil man, evil, viciously evil man. Evil infinity was J. Edgar Hoover. No, there's nothing good about that at all. And I'll stop right there.
Yeah. I'll just say, because you mentioned Malcolm X. I'll just say this one last thing about Spike Lee is that I personally don't like much of his films. Ironically, the one film I really do like of his is the one film which is not a Black film, which is called The 25th Hour. and I mean, personally, I actually kind of prefer him more as a documentarian. Like, I really liked his documentary When the Levees Broke about the hurricane, Katrina scandals. But I've tried watching so many of his films, and the bug just doesn't bite me. And I say this as like a film buff. I say this as a guy who loves, movies like Boys in the Hood, 12 Years a Slave. But Spike Lee, yeah, as you mentioned, I think, unfortunately, the Hollywood machine, you're just not going to find radical history in Spike Lee's films due to the nature of the game, and he's rubbing too much shoulders with the Black misleadership class. So that leads to this question: is I want you mentioned Malcolm X. Do you think the nation? Do you think that the Nation of Islam had anything to do with his death, or do you think that had more to do with the deep states, the FBI possibly infiltrating, possibly infiltrating the NOI, or just hiring somebody to pretend to be a Nation of Islam to kill Malcolm, to make it look as if it was a Nation of Islam? Because I know Malcolm did have a very bitter falling out with Louis Farrakhan, which we won't get into, and there are even some people who think that wait, was it Louis Farrakhan? No, Elijah Muhammad. But there are some people who think that Louis Farrakhan, who still is a prominent leader in the Black community, there are some people who say that he was complicit in Malcolm's death. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not going to go super in detail because there are people that I can refer you to that you can reach out to that have spent decades and decades, like literally decades, doing tremendous work, researching this, and I can say what I have read from the works of people who have spent a long time researching the topic. I can say, number one, really Malcolm is one of my, he's one of my, like, when I think of folks who have motivated me, like historical figures, Malcolm is way up there. Is way up there. Great Thomas Sankara is another person that is way up there. But Malcolm is that dude. I mean, Malcolm is that man. And yes, no doubt that the Nation of Islam had a powerful impact on him early on, when, literally you could say, saved his life in a lot of ways, when he was taken in by the Nation of Islam, and then he rose up on, the ranks and became like a national spokesperson and so forth. When we look at history, it's always, unfortunate when we see, Black people, especially given the fact that we are facing such a tremendous villain in white supremacy, a tremendous global villain in white supremacy and imperialism and colonization. White supremacy, you could say, is the umbrella over all that. It's one of those things that I don't think any black revolutionary or any black person that really cares about our community is happy about the history of that what happened, between Malcolm and the Nation of Islam. And so, but what I can say, when you ask me that question about the deep state, based on what I have heard, what I have read, more importantly, what I've read from folk, it appears that they were infiltrated in the same manner that the Black Panther Party was infiltrated many times over. This chapter was infiltrated. This chapter was infiltrated. We see even now that because everyone's talking about Fred Hampton because the movie has come out, but we look at William O'Neill. I mean, he infiltrated the Black Panther Party. He's the one that went and was able to tell the Chicago PD, this is where he sleeps, this is whatever, helped, and he ultimately was drugged. He was drugged.
Yeah, I was just about to mention your friend John Potash, who I had on the program, in his very extensive documentary said that Hampton was poisoned before the FBI.
Yeah, so it appears that the FBI infiltrated the NOI, Nation of Islam, and those folks that pull the trigger. Even when you look at the unrepentant white agents that were involved, that were working with there was like an offshoot bureau of the NYPD and folks that were working with the FBI, and they were, like I said, they had no, they were really unrepentant in terms of the role they played. I mean, they talked about, they have mentioned how it wouldn't have been possible had they not infiltrated in this manner, and so, I personally believe that these folks that pulled the trigger, that they were working with the NYPD, that they were working with the FBI. Matter of fact, there was one guy that was in the detail of Malcolm's security, who was a black man who said that the whole time when he was working in Malcolm's security detail, he was working for the NYPD. So he admitted that he was an agent, has admitted that he was an agent. And, from his, not my mouth, from his mouth, his own words. And so, but there's a long legacy of this. I mean, you look at, J. Edgar Hoover, had a black man who infiltrated Garvey's organization, and was like one of the first known black informants and was working with J. Edgar Hoover the whole time he was in Garvey's inner circle. So this is the nature of the business. And until we have folks that are not willing to sell out their souls and sell out their people, this is going to continue. As this is going to continue, whether it's 40 years ago or if it's 2021, that you're going to continue to have people that we have to be careful about who we bring in our inner circle when we're organizing, because it's important, as you know, Youri, extremely important to organize when you were trying to bring about social justice in a sustainable manner, and basically institutionalize social justice. When you're trying to do these things, these righteous things, these things that are, I would say, humanitarian, you have entities that are hell-bent on making sure that doesn't happen because they profit off of injustices, right? And so their job is like, listen, if we can find folks that look just like and sound just like these people, no matter what the group is, whether it's black, pink, purple, whatever, that is going to be a threat, and that has to be a concern that we have to have as a top priority to make sure that we tighten the ranks, through and through. And you know this, Youri. I mean, you know very much. So,
which is a perfect segue to Al Sharpton and why do I know our friends at Black Agenda Report have lots to say about like Al Sharpton. Why do you think Al Sharpton, for anyone, for any of the students that you work with, and even non-black folks who want to be allies to this liberation struggle, why do you think that they should run circles around Al Sharpton and not have him, be part of the be part of the people power movement?
yeah, and that's another unfortunate case because I believe when Al Sharpton first started doing what he was doing, he was I think that he was his mind and his heart were in the right place, trying to help his people. But over the years, I think with the popularity and with the paychecks coming in from the likes of MSNBC, his politics have quickly turned to genuflecting to the white liberals that sign his checks, and that's clear. I mean, you don't continue to be a regular personality on the likes of MSNBC if you don't, and the same could be said if he was with CNN or what have you. But the crazy thing is that if people saw him as a fixture on Fox News, as the token black liberal that they bring in, people would be saying, people would say, oh my gosh, because it's Fox News. I mean, he's definitely sold out and is a sellout, this, that, and the other. But when you go on an MSNBC or CNN, because those are white liberal outlets, and far too many of us are programmed to thinking that those white liberal outlets, corporate media outlets, are our friends, and they're not our friends. They're not the friends of humanity in any shape, form, or fashion. The critique goes away, and so that's why I appreciate the question that you put out there. What 1+1 does. Truth telling, because that is part of truth telling. The truth telling is that Al Sharpton would not be on that network that had it not, if he was outspoken on a lot of these critical issues that impact our community, that impact communities in general. And the same could be said with Van Jones. I mean, Van Jones is toted out there on CNN, so he can break down and cry every single time and have these little theatrical moments as if he's whatever. Van Jones knows who signs his checks. He knows who signs his checks, and he wants those checks to keep coming in. And as long as his narrative on different issues only goes so far, they're comfortable with that. They're comfortable with Al Sharpton only going so far because Youri, the optics are, because they know most people in the United States of America are non-critical thinkers and that's not that they can't be, but they have been designed, they have been socially engineered to be non-critical thinkers since they were kids and they were going to elementary schools. And elementary schools, by and large in this country, and middle schools and high schools and even colleges are not places where you're going to learn how to be a critical thinker, that you're going to learn media literacy and how to deconstruct dominant narratives. It's quite the opposite. So they have gone through that. So they know most Americans, when they see it, the optics is like blackface on whatever, well-known blackface on MSNBC, and he's talking about police brutality, and it's not what he says, Youri. It's not what he says. It's what they don't say. It's what they don't say.
That the Democrats are part of the problem.
Exactly. If I lie to you, Youri, down the line, if you discover the truth, you can trace it back to the origins of where that lie came from. Oh, that was Solomon that told me a lie. But if I don't mention something, the way I obfuscate and confuse things, whatever, I just don't say it, you don't know what to look for because I never said it. I just kept a significant chunk of information off of your mental radar. Someone who was looking to me to get information on this topic, and I could have provided you with a wealth of information in a very panoramic, comprehensive way, but I kept this chunk out because I don't want you thinking that way. That's the way they operate. Sharpton, only go so far. And right now, he doesn't even have to get those memos in the production room. He knows very well. My check is signed. Trust me, I got the game plan. I'm only going to go so far. And that is what, whether it's Joy, whether it's what's her name, Joy Reid, who's full. I mean, you sit there, and I remember, and listen, you know, I voted Green Party. You already know that, but during that whole thing, even with Bernie, she was out there when Bernie was at the top, you know, and it really, and Biden was basically an afterthought. Remember, he had lost the Iowa caucus, he lost New Hampshire. And she got on there, and I'll never forget, she was just outraged. She's like, just the people that were the Bernie, you know, the Bernie army, you know, they're a bunch of radicals, and there's no place for that, such and such. I mean, she's just a mouthpiece, and she loves it because she loves the checks that she's getting. She loves the checks, and so they give her this show, and she is awful, and she's not the only one, and she's not the only one, and so we have to be very careful about who we decide and be critical thinkers. That why would this outlet that we have criticized for so long give this person a platform? So they might invite Youri on, they might invite you on, they might invite me on. But here's the thing, Youri, you and I, we're probably not going to get invited on the second time, because we're probably going to let loose on things, and they're going to edit this out. All right, Youri Small, you know, that's it. That's the first and last time he's coming on the show. That's the first and last time. But when you see folks that are that look like you and I in terms of the melanin in their skin, and they have a long track record on MSNBC, CNN, that's when you got the critical thinking skills have to come out. Like, let me watch. Okay, now I see why. Now I'm watching the show. Now I see why they have him on. Now I see why they have her on. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and Al Sharpton is the perfect example of the Black misleadership class, which we denounce, which leads to this. I have three quick questions, three last quick questions, which is first of all, you know, we went through a summer of immense protests, open revolts against the state murder of George Floyd. It was incredible to see nationwide protests. It was incredible to see Australia, New Zealand, France, England, and Canada all, you know, showing solidarity and speaking out against the institutional racism in their own countries and champion, you know, Black Lives Matter there and the Indigenous Lives Matter there and so forth. And of course, immigrants who are also brutally marginalized. But now, but unfortunately, you know, the stupid 2020 circus race of Biden versus Trump has completely sucked all of that wonderful, revolts that was happening. Mm-hmm. And so the question I wanted to ask is, with the activists that you're involved with, and the students that you're involved with, and the local people power movements you're involved with, are there, there are still calls of defunding the police, abolishing the police. It's not going to happen though, because under Joe Biden though. But are there any calls to abolish the CIA, the deep state, demilitarize, and ending the global police force, the global stop and friskers of the world, which is, the American army and the CIA, which targets Latino countries, which targets indigenous people, which targets Black people, like, Africa, and AFRICOM? Are there any calls, are there any talks like that with the, with the activists that you observe, or the organizations that you're involved with?
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, Black Agenda Report has done a number of things on this issue over the years, but when you look at Black Alliance for Peace, BAP, they're doing a lot of stuff right now, around that. I mean, in terms of teach-ins and webinars and trying to organize communities to understand the deeper machinations of the FBI, the CIA, the police state that we live in the United States, which is and when you see the military, the global campaigns imperialist campaigns that the U.S. puts out there. They're extensions of the police force here. And then the police operate like the military does in Afghanistan, Pakistan. They operate like that, with black communities, black and brown communities here in the United States. So they've done, excellent work. So yeah, there are definitely organizations that have had outright, teach-ins and webinars on this exact topic, because this is something that more people within our community have to be educated on. Because here's the problem, Youri. I mean, year by year, when you have so many African, and I refer to people that are black, as African, I refer to you as an African, so when you have Africans, whether they're, Africans that were born in the United States, so-called African Americans, that are running and signing up to work for the CIA, to work for the FBI, that's a problem. That's a problem. That is a problem. But if you told them that the KKK was hiring, clerks and so forth, they would say no. Well, the CIA has way more blood, the blood of black people, of African people, on its hands than the KKK could ever wish. The KKK would blush at the opportunity to have the kind of bloodshed on their hands, black people's bloodshed, indigenous people bloodshed on their hands, that the CIA has. The CIA, people want to talk about all these different gangs and this gang and that gang. The biggest, baddest gang in the world, the biggest, baddest mafia in the world is the CIA. The CIA, and this intelligence state. I mean, even looking at the DIA, with the Defense Intelligence Agency, is bigger than the CIA and the FBI and the DIA combined. I mean, DEA combined. I mean, so, that's why I appreciate those teach-ins and webinars that organizations like Black Alliance for Peace are doing, because it's hard to organize people that if they're politically undereducated. We have to have, and that's why the Black Panther Party, I mean, when you think about the Black Panther Party, they did political education all the time. They wanted the brothers and sisters that joined the Black Panther Party for self-defense. They wanted to make sure that they were supremely politically educated. And the more politically educated you become, Youri, if you are new to this game, you're a novice, and then now you become politically educated. Now you're able to go and talk to people that you have influence over and educate them about what you've learned. And then and it just keeps paying itself forward. It keeps paying itself forward, and really encouraging people to do the reading, not just to take your word to say, listen, I'm telling you this, brother. I'm telling you this, sister. This is what they're about. And let me refer you to this source and this source. And let me refer you actually to primary sources where they have said it themselves what they do. I mean, the whole term blowback, Youri, comes from the CIA itself. And they said, what did they say? They said blowback based on what we have done, how we have gone around the world and destabilized these countries, especially in the Middle East, and how we have destabilized these countries and taken down governments. We have to believe that there's going to be some blowback, that they're going to try to seek some revenge. So they have said it themselves. They said, yeah, we've done it. Yeah, we did it. Yeah, we did it. And so we have to worry about blowback. And so, like, I tell people and folks that are watching right now, read the Chalmers Johnson, books, read those books. Read Legacy of Ashes by Tim Weiner, which is a thick book, but is a necessary read. And Legacy of Ashes gets into the history of the CIA, going all the way back to when they were the OSS, Office of Strategic Services, the precursor to the CIA, and it gets into how Youri, it gets into, like, primary sources gets into how the CIA was complicit with what was going on in East Timor. They knew what they had they knew what was about to go down. They knew about these different massacres, and then beyond that, they've been a part of going in and fomenting. We know what they did in Iran in 1953. We know what they did in 1954, taking out Jakarba Arbenz. And if people want to, and that is what led to the Iranian Revolution, because the people in Iran, U.S. U.S. citizens might not have known, but people in Iran knew that you took out Mohammad Mossadegh, and because you did that, you made it possible for the Shah to come in here and brutalize us and to use the Savak, the secret police that he organized to go in and brutalize people left and right and to terrorize people for decades. They knew that, and so the Iranian Revolution led to like, listen, the U.S. was behind all this. They organized. It was Kermit Washington, Kermit Roosevelt that the CIA used to, or the OSS, to use to do all this. So to answer that question in a roundabout way, we have to do better. Your show is tremendous, because I'm on your show right now. You are unafraid. You are unafraid to put that out. And I've told you this before, and I told you this offline over and over again. Do not worry about. Listen, our biggest struggle, one of our biggest struggles, Youri, and I will tell you this right now, just from me to you, and for everyone that's watching right now. One of our biggest struggles is breaking down the barriers of the distraction that many of our people are caught up in. The distraction, and it's not about, you could do a 2-hour show. It has nothing to do with the length of your show, because there are people that will sit in front of their TV and their computer and watch mindless social media videos for hours and hours and hours. And so it has nothing to do with whatever. It is our minds have been kind of, rubbed down to be this obtuse kind of dulled down. And we have to, one of our biggest things is to break down those barriers and find different ways to get the information to the people and to get us back in the mode of being critical thinkers and actually get many more of us into the mode of like, I'm willing to study. And so that's our biggest thing. But when you have a 1+1, when you have a Black Agenda Report and all these, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of Black media, fearless Black media, like 1+1, what you are doing. Because even if you educate one person, one brother or sister that stumbles across your video, Youri, what if that one person that stumbles across it is somebody who is meant to be, that has way more charismatic skills than you do, way more, and that once they get that information, they are going to have access to platforms that you and I could only dream of having. But it was your information that you gave them that now that they have the access to those platforms. I mean, look at the information and think about a Malcolm X, what the information did that he got. No one knew this guy, Malcolm Little, was going to go on to become this, but the information that his siblings gave him when they were sending him books while he was locked up and they were doing that. I mean, look at he had the charisma and he was destined to have platforms that they wouldn't have, his sisters and his brothers, siblings would not have. And look what he was able to do with that information. That's you, man. Don't underestimate what you're doing. That's you. You don't know if it's one person, because you would rather have 10 engaged people watching your program than 100 people, or 1,000 people that are sitting there. Yeah, we would love to have 1,000 people that are engaged, but it's better to have 10 people that are engaged with what you're doing than people that are just going to take a cursory look at your stuff and move on. I mean, and you see it. We look at the videos. We have videos that are just nonsense out there on YouTube, just stupidity, just kind of mindless stupidity, and they've got millions and millions of views. That's what we're dealing with, Youri. That is part of the. I'm telling you that is part of the weaponry of our enemies that has been put out there to really dumb down the masses. This is a plan. This is a plan. This is a plan. It is no doubt a plan, because if you all of a sudden overnight had the same audience as some of this stupidity out there, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to watch, are you kidding me? 9 million people watched a video of somebody, eating an ice cream cone and throwing it up. I mean, I'm just saying stupidity.
Yeah.
But if you, the moment Youri has 9 million, that's the moment, Youri, you probably need to not tell people where you are and whatever. That's when probably you're going to start to find out, man, my internet, my bandwidth is slow now. Why is it all of a sudden slow? Why is YouTube telling me that this content is not community whatever? Why can am I no longer able to post this on Facebook? That's when they start to say, but right now they don't see you as a threat. They don't see me as a threat. But keep doing what you're doing, man. Keep doing what you're doing. You are Black history.
Definitely. Well, thank you. That's really encouraging. Which leads to the second to last question, which is because you say that despite what the media is saying, there is a Black-led movement that is saying we need to not just defund the police at home, but we need to defund the global police abroad. So that being said, are there still a lot of Black-led movements and allies saying that we also need to close the loophole of the 13th Amendment? We need to also stop the criminal, racist, classist drug war, and we also need to repeal the Clinton crime bill and the welfare reform bill.
Yeah, no doubt, all of that. Yeah, the bill needs to, and who wrote the bill? Your president, right? Your president. Who wrote the bill? The one that
everyone says was lesser evil is
Sharpton and Joy Reid told you to vote for. That Van Jones broke down and started crying when he was elected. Not crying tears of sorrow. He wasn't morose. He was crying tears of joy, and on national television. He's the primary architect and author of the crime bill. None other than Joseph Biden.
The new Jim Crow that Michelle Alexander was saying to people.
Yeah.
When she said that the Clintons do not deserve the Black votes.
Yeah. And neither did Biden. Like I said, Biden wrote the crime bill. He is the primary architect of the crime bill. And so, that no doubt that needs to be, repealed. I mean, along with so many other things that are in existence right now that we can bring up, the 1033 program, military grade weaponry going into, police departments and being used against Black and brown and indigent, populations and so forth. The police state in this country. I mean, this country is a police state, and if you were living in a Black community, you were living underneath a police state. You were living under a draconian, vicious police state that does not see you as a human being. That is not about, oh, I know a good police officers. Yeah, everyone knows at least one good police officer, community police officer. It's not about that. It is not about them, and it's not even about the bad police officers, the ones that are racist and whatever, as nefarious as they are. We don't want to see them in our communities. It's about the system of policing that makes it possible for those bad police officers to do what they do with impunity, and to do it with impunity to the point that, oh, this standard has been set. This standard has been set. Well, I can go shoot this Black person because majority of the time we get off. Majority of the time we don't even get adjudicated. Majority of the time we don't even get adjudicated, let alone stand trial and get sentenced like a civilian for killing a civilian in cold blood. Yeah. It is the system. Because if you radically change the system, and even institute more community control of the policing, where you have community control of the hiring and firing of police officers and police chiefs, then you have actual accountability. Oh, you killed somebody in cold blood, you are going to stand trial and like you would if you were a civilian. And if you get sentenced, like rightfully so, and you get sentenced to life behind bars, then that is justice. You deserve to be behind bars indefinitely. The death penalty is too easy. I mean, my friend, Capital X, who's done a tremendous amount of work fighting the death penalty. That is too easy. That is too easy of an exit for folks. Too easy for an exit for folks. Police officers need to stand trial the same way it would, they would have to if they were a civilian and they killed somebody in cold blood. It's
Same
got
with
you got no,
the exact same thing with the military. We can't do military people investigating, which leads to the final question because I know you have to go, which is our indigenous brothers and sisters and elders and folk. I know you're one of the few black journalists and black academics that's outspoken in wanting justice for Native Americans and wanting them to be completely decolonized and their apartheid and their unique Jim Crow dismantled. And I've noticed that in Canada, there's a growing merging of the Native Lives Matter movement with the Black Lives Matter there. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see that really happening in the U.S. And my friend Alfred Desaias, who I've had on the show, talked about how we need to have a global Native Lives Matter and champion the grievances of Native Americans. Now, you're very much, like I said, you want, justice for Native Americans. Do you think there's going to come a time soon where the Black Lives Matter movement in the U.S. Starts merging with the long forgotten Native Lives Matter, and of course, our Latino brothers and sisters, and all of that, merging into an unstoppable anti-colonial, anti-white supremacist force?
That's an excellent question. And since we're talking about Black history and just history in general, the great thing about when you start to study history, not read history, but start to study history, highlight and underline, reading these books and reading these articles, not just to read them and say, oh, I read this book. I mean, far too many of us read books just to tell other people, oh, I read that book. Well, what did you gain from that book? What did you pull out from that book? Even reading, the works of people that we don't like, it's important to read the books and the papers of enemies of yours to study their blueprint, to study, to better study them. It's like almost watching game tape. When you're an athlete, and you have a big opponent, you study the movements of that boxer. Okay, they like to shift this way, they like to do this. You study. We need to do.
Yeah, that's why I sometimes read right-wing news or watch documentaries on like right-wingers and right-wing movements. And even if I hate what they're saying in an interview, it's why I'll sometimes watch hours of like Nigel Farage speeches or even Trump speeches and like the people who champion them like Ann Coulter and so forth. Yeah.
So as we look at history and studying history in that same vein, we know that this doing what the suggestion that you gave, if we are able to because there are people I personally know people that are like myself that have consistently build coalitions and have coalitions in existence with Native Americans and Chicano brothers and sisters and Latinx brothers and sisters. But what I'm trying to say is, when we do that, we're not even reinventing the wheel. This is something that we have a history of doing this. You go back to the Black Panther Party, they used to work with the American Indian movement, AIM. They worked with the Young Lords. We know this. They worked, all right. They even worked with radical white, college students. So, and that was like kind of the original Rainbow Coalition. And so we know that there is a history of doing that. There is a history of doing that, that it doesn't mean that you drop the focus on issues that are relevant to your community, that issues that have been going on in your community. It doesn't mean that this community needs to drop this, that community needs to drop this, or your community needs to drop that. No, you still continue to whatever. But when you look at commonalities, things that are common for all of our communities in terms of similar enemies and similar policies that are having a vastly negative and nefarious impact on our communities, there are certain things that we need to cross communities and work with one another to fight those, because we become much stronger as opposed to this. With this, we become stronger with this, unified. But you can still keep your, for goodness sakes, it'd be ridiculous to ask somebody to shed their identity or to stop fighting for certain injustices that are endemic in this community or this community. But where you find commonality, and if your brothers and sisters who are Chicano or Native American, and you're Black, you're African, and you see them, whatever, no doubt you should take up for them, and you should take up and speak up for them and find ways where you can help them. Because when you need that help and you need additional forces, people advocating and coming into the fray and speaking out on behalf in terms of helping out with a struggle that you're dealing with. I mean, we saw globally with George Floyd. We saw people in Palestine. We saw people in Palestine taking up for George Floyd. We saw with Michael Brown, people in Palestine holding up signs in West Bank that were saying, "I am Mike Brown." I mean, that's deep. That they who have never been in the United States whatsoever, and they're dealing with this awful apartheid state that the state of Israel has imposed on people in West Bank and East Jerusalem and Gaza Strip.
Whose deep states, by the way, whose deep states and their right-wing movements kind of make ours look like Gaza by comparison.
Exactly. and they're able, and these Palestinians are able to say something in solidarity with you. Of course, no doubt. So no doubt that we need much more of that. I think you were alluding to, we need much more of that, Youri. And so for me, when I hear about a struggle that is going on in an indigenous community, whether it's in the United States or elsewhere, and there's an opportunity to try to bring somebody on to talk about their struggle and to talk about things that they would like to see as support from people outside their community. I try to jump at those. I try to jump at those opportunities, Youri. I really try to jump at those opportunities because how dare we? How dare we not do that? How dare we not do that? Us people of color globally, we are the majority. We are the majority, and those folks in the so-called global South, in the so-called developing world, which has been made a developing world because of European conquest that has plundered and pillaged, nations that centuries ago were at their apex, but they have now been pillaged by colonialism and white supremacy and imperialism, and have been brought back, to Stone Age. We look at Libya, that was bombed back into the Stone Age. We have to have global solidarity. We have to have global solidarity. And I'll end on this, Youri. That's one of the most painful things is when when we looked even back at like 2010, 2011, seeing so many Black people cheerlead what was happening to Libya, cheerlead the bombing of Libya, and cheerleading that, because Obama was doing it.
And they still want to destroy Syria. Libya was barely the Libyan, true Libyan anti-colonial democracy was barely 6 feet under, and they still want to destroy. They still want to destroy Syria, supporting non-existent moderate rebels.
Right. So we've got to. You've got to continue to do what you're doing and continue to get that information out there. But as you just did, even you put in that big nugget out there with that last question that you just asked me. The last question for the interview is really important, that we need to see and create lines of communication for solidarity with people, with other oppressed people, other people that are in the midst of real struggle right now, whether it's indigenous people within Turtle Island, North America, whether it's Aboriginals in Australia, whether it's the Maori in New Zealand. Whether it is our brothers and sisters in Southern Africa who are in South Africa right now, who are still in the midst of an economic apartheid, where the minority, the white minority, controls 85% 85, 86, 87, 88% of the arable land.
With their own black misleadership class,
Yeah.
which unfortunately the
Oh,
ANC
yeah.
became.
No doubt. Folks that have sold out, no doubt about it, that have sold, no doubt about it. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us. But Youri, it sometimes when you think about it, it seems daunting. But what else are you gonna do? Like you're not the kind of person that you might take, and we all need to do that for our mental health, like taking a week off, like just because it can become so overwhelming. But there's no way after you take a little holiday vacation, you got to get right back into your work, because what else, if you're an activist like you are, what else are you going to do? What else? I mean, and I'm not saying like outside of your work, we all have our work that we do to help pay the bills and so forth. But you're not going to sit by and not speak out in the face of injustice. That's just not how and it's not me telling you to do that. There's something in you that has told you to do that. I can't tell you to do that. That's something that no one can tell me. It's just something that I can't. And as we talk about Black History Month and we talk about King and don't talk about King. If you want to keep your mouth shut about things that matter, shut up and stop talking about King. Stop talking about him, that you love this, whatever, because you can't pick a little piece of this person, a little piece of this person, and say, I'm going to ignore this, because it was King. And I'll end on this. It was King that said, the moment, to paraphrase him, is the moment that we become silent about things that matter, is the day that our lives begin to end. And it also is a point where we start to become as culpable of the evil that is taking place, that we have chosen not to speak out about, as the people that are actually carrying out that evil. I mean, that's deep, man. Silence. What do you say? Silence is betrayal. Silence is betrayal. You couldn't look yourself in the mirror and saying, "Oh man, I should have said this. I should have spoken out." There's no way. That's not how Youri is wired. So keep doing the work that you're doing. You're doing tremendous work. It really is. I'm glad you started this this platform. And I try to watch as many as I can. I mean, you keep pushing out those interviews. Sometimes it's hard to
Well, that's
but good stuff.
Well, on that note, because Solomon has to go, he's got many students and people to see. So we were joined on this edition, our second Black History Month special, with the wonderful Solomon Commissiong, who is the editor-in-chief and founder of Your World News, where journalism and activism is not mutually exclusive. He's the author of several books, including a hip-hop activist, Unapologetically Outspoken, Hip-Hop, Social Justice and Liberation. Folks, you have to, and I'm going to link to all of his YouTube channels so that you guys can see his wonderful interviews, his wonderful discussions, his fantastic documentaries. So Solomon, thank you so much for joining me. I hope we get to have you back in the near future. Best of luck to you and your family and your colleagues during these incredible, daunting times with the ongoing coronavirus. And thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it, as well as your friendship and your encouragement.
Thank you. Keep doing it. Yeah, keep doing it. Don't stop, Youri. Yeah. All right.
Likewise. Power to the people. That's the fascist pigs.
All right.